Welcome to the real Ramblers movie talk for fanatics. The real Ramblers movie talk for fanatics. And now your hosts, Bill and Lee Howard.
Hello and welcome to the real what?
It's just funny that it's like that's now cemented in, like you have to
I know I have
Santa Claus your way.
I was listening to other podcasts and they do the same thing. They have the same intro every time. So it's like it's my thing.
Yeah.
When I go on Johnny Carson, he's going to ask me to.
So you guys are ramblers and well, you're real. He's dead. He's not alive. I don't know. Anyway.
Welcome to the Real Ramblers, folks. I'm Bill. This is Lee.
I'm Lee.
And today I'm very excited because this is maybe the episode that I have most been looking forward to.
Whoop, whoop.
Today we are discussing, I was going to say arguably, but I don't think it is arguably the greatest director who has ever lived.
Michael Bay. Just kidding.
I like Michael Bay, but no, Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So Alfred Hitchcock, since I was very young and actually first got into movies, Hitchcock kind of always grabbed my attention. I remember, I don't know what, it was either Psycho or Rear Window that I probably first saw when I was very young. And then when I had my years working at video stores, that's when I kind of started absorbing all his other movies. Mm-hmm. And once I started digging in, I was just like, who is this dude?
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Whereas a lot of classic films, it's funny, whenever I watch those little letterboxed things, shout out to Letterboxd, we love Letterboxd.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever they do those 4 favorites, I don't want to make fun of anybody because, I mean, your favorite films are your favorite films.
Sure.
But I kind of get annoyed when they're like, what are your 4 favorite films? And there's always those people that are like, oh, I can't decide between a Bergman or a Cassavetes.
Right.
And it's like, come on.
A Birdman.
Yeah. And it's like, it just seems pretentious to me. Like, maybe it isn't. Maybe those literally are your favorite movies. But I just find it weird that people don't say Back to the Future. Like, I just find it funny. Although some do. But anyway.
Yeah.
Emma Stone was like The Jerk. And I'm like, yes.
Nice. She's cool.
That's why you're the best.
Get her as a guest.
Well, I'll call her up.
Yep.
But anyway, a lot of classic things, I think, by film fans get blown out of proportion as being the best.
Right.
When maybe they aren't. Like, even to a certain degree, Citizen Kane, which is still just,
most people are like, it's the greatest film ever. I know I saw it.
And I love it. I love Citizen Kane. I love everything about it. But I don't even think it's in my top 4.
Right. I'm certain I saw it like one day ages ago, but I barely remember it.
Yeah. But Hitchcock, to me, I don't think has ever been overblown in what he is, his importance to the history of film, or his, I think he's more innovative than anybody's ever been.
Yeah.
Like, there's innovative guys like Nolan, who try new things and are very specific about, but I don't know, Hitchcock was so versatile and invented so many of the things that are still used today.
Yeah.
So,
revolutionary for the time.
Yeah. But he is now still. The things he did are still innovative.
Sure,
I think that's what makes him what he is. So he started in England in the early 20s in silent film, did a lot of contract work, where he was just like a director in somebody's stable and they were like, here's a film, direct this one, here's a film, direct this one. And he did a lot of comedies in his early silent work, which a lot of people don't associate. And one of his last films was a comedy too. So, I mean, he's done everything from spy thrillers to comedies to dramas, obviously, to horror to thrillers. Yeah. Like, he's been all over the place. But the style in which he tells the stories and kind of what he made himself into. Right. Because he was kind of the first director that became known to the public.
Sure.
Like, people wouldn't know who directors were.
Yeah.
You'd say their name and they might know from a movie, but they didn't know what they looked like. And he's kind of the first director that became a personality.
Yeah.
Like the actors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially because, like, how he would do his movie trailers, like, he would be in the trailer.
Yeah.
Like, the next thing we're going to look at is
Yeah, and
I can't show you this.
Yeah, they'd be trailers with no
Spot
footage.
on impression. Yeah.
It would just be him talking about the movie.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like his Psycho trailer is still one of the best trailers of all time.
And there was
it's
one,
like
we'll
8
get to it, but there was
something.
one for Frenzy that was like that too.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So I think his first kind of legitimate hit was in 1927, a silent film called The Lodger.
Okay.
And it's basically about these people who rent a family that rents out a room to a guy who may or may not be Jack the Ripper.
Oh, crazy.
And it's really good.
It's a silent movie?
It's silent, yeah. And it's so moody and has so many innovative camera thing. And you got to remember, in 1927, a movie camera was like the size of a Buick.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right?
You
It was
could swing it around
gigantic.
and do crazy shit.
Yeah, but the camera stuff that he did even back then was just unheard of. He did a lot of other movies back then that became big. The Man Who Knew Too Much in 1934 was big, and oddly enough, he remade it.
I saw that. I was looking at his like a list of all, because he's done 53 movies.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're only going to talk about a handful of them. We're not going to do all 53. But yeah, I saw that in the list. I'm like, did he remake his own movie? That's fucking crazy.
Twice.
Oh shit. Okay.
He remade The Man Who Knew Too Much and what? Oh no,
the Vince Vaughn Psycho he did, right?
Anyway, yeah, man, I love the original is great, and the remake in '56 was with James Stewart and Doris Day.
Oh wow!
And actually, that was the movie that had her famous "Que Sera Sera" song.
Oh, okay, crazy.
By Doris Day.
That?
That's where it came from.
Did not know that.
And the remake is brilliant. So in 1944, he did Lifeboat.
Okay.
Which became a huge hit. And at the time, movies weren't really done like that because the whole movie is just people in a lifeboat.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay.
And it's all about intrigue of you don't know who you're in the boat with.
Right.
And where they're from and who's good and who's bad and who's
And I feel like
to
we've
blame
seen a lot
for-
of like movies like that, obviously, since then.
For sure.
There's been a million of them, but just for the one that jumped into my head was like that movie Devil.
Yeah.
In the elevator.
They're on the elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah, tons of movies like that.
And
kind of he originated that. I don't think there was anything like that before 1944.
Probably not.
So then in the late 40s is when he started really getting big hits and becoming known. And that's when he kind of was labeled as the Master of Suspense.
Right,
the 40s is where that really kind of took off. 1948, he did Rope.
Yeah.
Which is still considered kind of a lesser Hitchcock and is one of my favorites.
Me too. That's one of the ones I rewatched.
Yeah.
Because it had been a while. And I love it. And for those who don't know, it was a play, and it all takes place in one apartment, and it literally starts with two guys murdering their friend.
And it's based on a real life murder.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
Leopold and Loeb were these two guys who had killed somebody just to see if they could get away with it.
Right. Yeah.
So
and then they put his body in a trunk, and they have a dinner party for him. And they're just like, let's see if anybody,
and all his friends and family.
Yeah. And let's see if anybody can figure it out and stuff. And it's shot like it's one shot. Yeah. There's 10 edits in the movie, but it looks like it's all one long shot.
Yeah.
Which is and it's like crazy because I watched a little behind the scenes, and it's like the planning is bananas because they built the set, and it's like depending on where the camera is, like the camera goes over here, so like guys behind are like removing walls and stuff like that so that they can get certain angles. Because I even thought that at one point, like the trunk that they put the dude in, the camera's like behind it and it's facing them.
Yeah.
And then they're going along doing a thing, and then later the camera comes over and it shows that trunk in the corner of a room, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Hold on, wait. How do they do that? What's going on?
Yeah.
Like the camera you couldn't put a camera behind. There's a wall there.
Right.
So just it's bananas.
Especially again in 1948 with giant cameras.
Seriously,
it's not like you could have had somebody with a Steadicam.
This is one of those movies too where it's funny, like looking into it now, how. And I didn't realize it until I watched that Scream Queen documentary, how it's like, they're like, it's one of like the gayest horror movies kind of thing. And I was like, I never really caught that the first time I saw it, but it's like in the original play or novel, it was it was like it was a fact. It wasn't even like subtext. It was like the two guys who murdered the dude were together. And there was even stuff like their teacher, who was James Stewart, had an affair with one of the students as well. But they're like, once they made the screenplay, the studio was like, take all of that out. Even there was like just lines that were like come over here, my dear boy. And they're like, take out my dear boy.
Yeah.
It's too gay.
Yeah.
And he originally wanted like Cary Grant and Montgomery Clift, but they turned it down because they're like, too gay.
Yeah.
So it's like all that now looking at it is subtext, but you can absolutely see that.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Stewart was so good in it. Just like, I love, it's so cool. It's just like it's like you're trying to figure out the murder with Jimmy Stewart, even though we saw it.
Yeah.
And it's shot. So the suspense in it is so good. And
that's what's crazy is that you've got this whole movie that's in one room, which for a lot of filmmakers, it would be hard to create suspense in one room for an entire running time of a movie.
Yeah.
And he does it brilliantly. There's not a boring moment in that movie. And even though they open the movie, the opening shot is the murder.
Yeah.
So it's not even like we don't know what's going on. Like we know everything, and yet it's still suspenseful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that. And the funny thing is, a lot of movies, even modern movies that are set up like stage plays, I find that when they do movies that are set up like that, the people sometimes tend to overact them as if it's a stage play. Yeah,
because it's a different kind of acting.
Yeah, but they don't do that in Rope.
No.
They keep it very subdued and realistic.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that I love about Hitch is that if you watch other movies from the 40s,
right,
they all have that kind of over the top, right?
Get on the train, see?
Yeah, exactly. They have that. Yeah. They have that over the top 40s style acting.
Yeah,
but Hitchcock movies don't.
No, it was very like natural.
Yeah, very
like
naturalistic.
Watching it now, it doesn't seem so dated.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell it's an old movie, but it doesn't feel like it's unwatchable, if that makes sense.
They still seem very realism.
Yeah, I love Rope. It's great. Big recommend.
After that, 2 years later, in 1951, he does Strangers on a Train. Again, brilliant. And this one became a hit and was actually kind of copied in with Throw
a Mama from the Train.
Yeah. Inspired by that, which, by the way, Throw a Mama from the Train is brilliant.
Starring Danny DeVito.
Yeah, that's right.
From my famous sign-off
one of Billy Crystal's
episode.
best roles, and also suspenseful while still being funny.
Yeah, Strangers on a Train was one that I know I saw like 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
So I just kind of watched a couple sort of like recap YouTube videos to kind of give me a refresher.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And it's shot so awesome, and just the themes, it's like there's a real like duality to it, like the when the guys first meet, it's like the guy's foot taps the other guy, and that's like, oh hey, I recognize you. And it's like that shit like repeats. There's a lot of like similar like the shots, like following this guy's feet getting off the bus and going into the train, and then same with this guy. It's like balanced, if that makes, I'm not explaining myself very well.
There's like visual symmetry and stuff, and
and one guy being like, oh, I'd like to strangle her, and then they cut to a scene of another guy and his hands are in the strangle position just coincidentally.
Doing
you know what I mean?
Else. Yeah.
It's very.
2 of my favorite shots in that movie is the murder that you see in the glasses.
Oh yeah, it's so cool.
That's amazing. Which even that is like, how did you achieve that with the technology at the time?
Yep.
And the other is at the tennis match where everybody in the audience, their heads are going back and forth watching the match, but the one guy who doesn't care about the match, his head is staying still.
Right.
And it's just very cool to see that everything in the screen is going back and forth and back and forth, and the one guy you're supposed to be watching is looking dead straight forward.
It's so, everything is so deliberate, like very, very, very planned.
Yeah.
It's
the bad
super
guy
cool.
is a classic smarmy, you just hate him.
Yeah. Kind of like in Rope as well. Like the one guy was so aggressively like it's almost like he wanted to get caught, and to be like, look at how brilliant I am. Like, oh, cocky.
Yeah.
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 But the guy was like a super psycho in Strangers on a Train.
Yeah, it's just
it was great.
Awesome. Another 3 years goes by, Dial M for Murder comes out in 3D.
Oh my God, that was 3D?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And it's still like my disc for it is in 3D.
Hilarious. Was there a lot of like that classic like moving shit to the front of the...
There is, but it's not like Friday the 13th obvious. But there is. Like he really tried to make sure that there was cool stuff.
Cool.
But
I don't think I've seen that one.
But aside from the gimmicks, it's one of the best twist movies. Like when you see the setup and then you see the murder and then you see it unraveling and the killer's plan unraveling. It's really cool. And then there's this big twist. I won't give it away, even though it's an old movie. I won't give it away. But when the big twist happens and you're just like, oh, dude, you're screwed. Like the one thing you didn't think of.
Oh, no. Okay.
You know, and, but it's really good. And again, super moody, super cool camera work.
Huh.
Another few years passes after that. And then we get one of the most gigantic Hitchcock hits with Rear Window in 1959.
Right.
Rear Window pretty much set a new standard for a thriller.
Right, yeah.
Also brought voyeurism into the fold, which in 1959 was not particularly a quality that was, admired.
Sure, yeah.
It was in 1959, any kind of voyeurism was really looked at as like
goddamn pervert.
Kinky pervert underworld sort of thing to do. So to have that happen. And then technically, it's brilliant. I remember in the making of, or in one of the documentaries about it, that they were filming in a soundstage and they came in and Hitch is like, okay, so James Stewart's apartment is going to be here and then he has to see all this. So they start planning it out and then the people building the sets are like, well, it's not going to fit in here.
Yeah.
Like, because he's watching a 3-story building and you have to see everybody's apartment. And they're like, we can't build that in here. And then he's like, well, does this soundstage have a basement? And they're like, well, yeah. And he's like, then remove the floor.
Wow, that's so crazy.
So they literally destroyed the floor and built the set in the basement.
Wow, crazy.
Coming up. And it's so effective when you watch the movie. Like you really feel like you're looking at the courtyard of an apartment building.
Yeah.
Like it feels very authentic. And you can even see between the buildings, you can see traffic going by.
Yeah, that's what I thought was super. Because I wasn't sure at first. I'm like, where did they film this? Did they find like a really closed in like apartment complex? Because again, this is another one that I know I saw forever ago, but I just watched some like recaps on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that they built like this courtyard, these apartment sets and stuff, where it was crazy.
And I think the traffic was just a screen, projection.
Yeah.
But and then again, as that one unfolds, Rear Window's got to be one of the most tense of his movies because the whole time he can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's watching what he thinks is a murderer.
Yeah. Across for the people who haven't seen it. Yeah. He's like, his leg is broke and he
thinks he witnesses a murder.
Yeah. Across the street in one of the windows because he's like bored and he's like with binoculars kind of just like spying on the neighbors because there's like nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And kind of invents like stories about well, this person must be doing that and this lady must be a hooker or something. And
then he kind of gets his girlfriend, Grace Kelly, involved in it, and eventually she goes over to that apartment to try and find evidence.
Yeah.
And then the killer comes home and there's like all this crazy stuff that goes down.
The coolest thing I think about this one is that we only ever see things from his perspective.
Yeah.
Like the audience is stuck in the room with Jimmy Stewart because, it's never like the camera's never in the apartment across the way.
Yeah.
I don't think, right?
I don't
it's
think
always
so.
with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah,
like
it's always him following the person.
He's watching like her, like when Grace Kelly.
Yep.
When she's over there, like the camera never goes with her into the other apartments. Like we're always stuck with him until the end when the camera's in the courtyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like that's such a cool way to literally capture the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And put them in the shoes of the main dude.
Yeah. And that movie, unusually for Hitchcock, doesn't have a lot of opportunity to do crazy camera work because it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
But the stuff he did do technically is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Considering the set he was working within. So it's brilliant. We're going to move ahead a little here. 1955, To Catch a Thief was great. 1956 was the remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much, which was great. 1958, Vertigo, another gigantic, and what many people classify as the best Hitchcock movie.
Really?
I don't agree.
I watched it for my first time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really like it.
I appreciate visually what he did in it because he did some crazy stuff.
Visually great, yeah.
Performances were great, but I wasn't as involved in the story.
No, like Jimmy Stewart's not a very likable character.
No,
and
not
it was
at all.
just strange for Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
Like the murder plot was like so elaborate that I was like that it's almost too much for me.
Agree.
I'm sure a lot of like film heads out there are going to be like, "Fuck you, you stupid asshole."
I like how we call everything heads.
Yeah. If you're a fan, you're a real
Vertigo head.
The podcast heads out there are going to be like, So it just, for me, I was like, I don't think I really like this one.
Yeah,
just I didn't click.
I enjoy Vertigo, but mainly more for visuals.
Yeah.
But it's actually not. It wouldn't even be in my top 5 or 8 of Hitchcock's.
Yeah.
A lot of film people would disagree.
Yeah.
But
they can eat shit.
Yeah. 1959 was North by Northwest. Great Cary Grant movie. More of an adventure movie. Great performance by Cary Grant. Great action in it. But the year later, we jumped to Psycho.
Oh. Has there been a more perfect movie?
I've seen so many documentaries and read so many books.
Yeah.
If you are a fan of Psycho, there's a book by Stephen Rebello called The Making of Psycho, which is pretty much everything you'll ever need to know.
That's awesome.
The book is the definitive book on Psycho.
Cool.
But so many great stories linked with Psycho that he had just come off Vertigo and he wanted to do something different. And then he found that somebody brought him this pulp book,
right? Which
was like really a low key.
It wasn't like a huge bestseller.
No, it was like a dirty book that people don't, it was like Pulp Fiction, literally Pulp Fiction. But he got carried away with it and he was like, no, this is what I want to do. And nobody wanted him to make it. The studio didn't want him to make it. So he said, what if I make it with almost no money? And I'm going to use, at that time, he had Alfred Hitchcock Presents, the TV show.
Oh, okay.
So he used his TV crew to film Psycho.
Wow. That's right. Okay.
And for almost no money.
Wow.
And it was a game changer for movies in general.
I mean, it was kind of the birth of slasher movies.
It was the birth of slashers for sure. It also was like the first movie to take a famous lead actress and bill them as the star of the movie and then kill them off in the first third.
Yeah. Like we wouldn't have Scream. We wouldn't have Scream.
Yeah.
If Psycho wasn't
You wouldn't have Halloween, wouldn't have this.
Well, yeah.
Most of horror you wouldn't have if it weren't for Psycho. But in addition to what it did for film and what it did for horror, it also is photographed gorgeously.
Yeah.
And in such a low budget,
and he chose to make it black and white. They were making color movies at the time.
Yeah, color movies were around in 1960, and he wanted black and white. And the performances by everybody are great.
Top tier.
But Anthony Perkins, even though it kind of, before this movie, Anthony Perkins was a romantic leading man.
Yeah.
And he was a serious actor that was respected as such, did a lot of romantic roles, was looked at as a hunk.
Yeah.
And then he does this movie and it kind of ruined his career.
Yeah.
He still went on to do some great things. And I know he loved the role of Norman.
Yeah. He must have resented it a little bit too at the same time, which sucks.
He came back 4 times to play Norman. So he did love the character.
In a solid series.
Yeah. In a series that really doesn't have a bad entry.
No. Even the worst one is still watchable.
Yeah.
And fun.
Yeah.
Part 3.
And part 3, which he directed.
That's right.
But his performance in the original is maybe, I think, one of the great screen performances of all time. It's so good. Nuanced and so many. And when you combine it with the way Hitch filmed it, there's so many shots when I think it's when Arbogast, the detective, is checking the signature book.
I immediately thought of that too when Norman leans
over and it's from under his chin.
Yeah.
And you just see that shadow triangle of the bottom of his chin and it looks like a bird.
Yeah. He eats like a bird.
Yeah. He eats like a bird.
That, which is... Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many little tiny Anthony Perkins moments that are absolute brilliance.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's one of those things where we've seen this in so many other movies where you feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Even though he's straight up murdering people, he's also just a really sick dude.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel bad. He doesn't, it's just so good. Like,
which is played up even more in Psycho 2, which is...
Oh, man. You feel really bad for him.
Psycho 2 is only a couple notches below Psycho for me. Psycho 2 is brilliant. I love
Psycho 2.
And his performance in that is unbelievable.
Really good. Yeah.
But yeah, Psycho
that shot in Psycho still creeps me out to this day of Arbogast at the top of the stairs and Norman mother coming out and it's looking straight down. It's a terrifying shot. It's like goosebumps.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah. It's so
and
good.
that, again, the brilliance of Hitchcock, that he's like, I want Mother to come out and kill this guy, but we can't see his face.
Yeah.
I'm going to film it from above.
I've watched some YouTube, like I watch people reacting to movies for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because sometimes you just assume everybody knows the twist in Psycho, but sometimes because movies are so old, people don't.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to watch people like nowadays go back and watch and they're like, what?
Yeah.
And it's fucking awesome that it's just like their minds got so blown by that. Yeah. Psycho's perfect. One of my all-time favorite movies.
In 1955 to 61, he was mainly doing Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Okay.
Then in 63, he follows up Psycho with The Birds.
Right.
The Birds was a really well-known novel.
Right.
I think I'm getting this right, but it was a Daphne du Maurier novel who also wrote Rebecca, which was another film that he had done. And she was a famous thriller author. The Birds is a strange... I love The Birds. First off.
Yeah.
I'm kind of dumbfounded that in 2024, I can sit down and watch The Birds. And for some reason, even though those effects were done with like plates of glass.
Oh, yeah. Like the effects are by now standards terrible.
And yet they don't distract me.
No, it's like
which
you kind of
get
wrapped up in that world. So it's like,
and they're still scary.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I like about that. There's no reason that this happens.
Yeah.
They never explain why this is happening.
Yeah.
It's just like nature is scary, you know? And I was watching some YouTube people talking about it and stuff. And it's some people are like, it's very metaphorical about women and stuff like that. And it's like all this happens when I can't remember who was the actress?
Tippi Hedren.
Yeah. When all this happens when she shows up, coincidentally. And then there's at one point where they're even like, they blame her. Like, this is your fault. Like, you showed up and this happens.
Yeah.
And there was like the mother-son relationship with the guy is like really weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Totally weird.
As well. And there's like, this YouTuber had like a whole list of things on how this is like a metaphor at the time, especially for how women are viewed and blamed for certain things and stuff. And I was like, holy fuck, that actually all really lines up.
And I'll just throw in there that there's a lot of history about Hitchcock and women.
Yeah.
He had a great relationship with his wife, Alma. She was a collaborator, but he also was he would become obsessed with his leading women.
Yeah.
He would be kind of creepy with them in some situations. And yet, in a time when women were not really respected in Hollywood, he collaborated with women a lot,
right,
and had a lot of women in his company,
right,
and employed a lot of women and respected them as equals in the creative process.
Okay.
So it's funny that he's kind of both sides of that coin.
Right.
Like, he had issues with how he got obsessed with women and maybe the way he treated the women that he was obsessed with. But then on the other hand, he was very supportive of women and very
crazy. I guess I don't know. I think I only had really heard stuff that he was somewhat problematic with some of the actresses or whatever, but also revered. I don't really know much of the history of it, so I can't speak on that.
He was an innovator with like the amount of women he employed, though. There was
interesting.
And there was women that worked for him that went on to have really, like, after he stopped or after he died, they went on to have very successful, high-level careers.
Interesting.
Because of working with Hitch. So yeah, it's a Hitchcock and women is a strange relationship. But anyway, The Birds is there's certain scenes that when Tippy's waiting outside the school and the birds are all forming on the playground.
Right, yeah.
And it's all done to just, you can hear the kids singing choir and there's no other music.
Yeah.
Totally creepy. And then her being attacked by the birds in the attic is still
really creepy.
It's terrifying.
Finding the guy with the no eyes and stuff.
And that was like, that
probably
kind of gore wasn't shown in 1963.
Because even in Psycho, there was there's no gore.
No.
Like, at all.
No. So The Birds is great.
Yeah.
1966 was Torn Curtain with Paul Newman and Julie Andrews. Not looked at as one of his best movies. It's kind of a international intrigue thriller. But it's worth watching for a scene when a guy comes to arrest or kill Newman. and Newman and this woman who's like a cook or a maid in this house, there's another guy outside waiting by the car to take him, and they decide they're going to have to kill this guy, but they have to do it quietly. And there's no music. It's the only sounds of the whole scene are their voices and them going and struggling with this guy and trying to kill him.
Okay.
And it's a brilliant scene. Look it up on YouTube. The murder scene from Torn Curtain.
Okay, got it.
It's brilliant.
Siri, remind me to watch Torn Curtain oven scene.
So the only other one, there's other films we skipped, and there's Family Plot came later and everything. But the last film of his that I think was truly great in 1972, which is weird to think of Hitchcock in the 70s.
Yeah.
Was Frenzy.
Yep, that's one I watched for my first time.
So you just watched this for your first time. Frenzy is, I almost want to say it's tied with Psycho for me.
Wow,
that's how much I love it.
Wow, nice.
It's definitely the most modern feeling Hitchcock film.
Yeah.
Of his entire filmography. And it's basically about, in London, there's a killer on the loose who's killing women by strangling them with neckties.
Right.
What did you think?
Oh, I thought it was great.
Great. Well, we'll see you next.
Yeah. No, that's all I wrote.
No
notes. The suspense was really great. The thing that I wrote you about was that one, because it's not like you don't have to wait until the end to find out who the killer is. You find out pretty quickly who it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, okay, they're just telling us. So now the whole last from the middle of the movie on, now you know who the killer is, and now have to, watch everybody else.
Then there's a subplot of the police thinking it's somebody else.
Yeah, another dude being framed for it and stuff like that. There's that one shot where it's like, now you know who the killer is, and he's friends with the woman that's about to get killed. Yeah. And it's like, she's like, oh, did you want to come up? I don't know what it is. You're like, hey, do you want to come up for a drink or use my phone or something like that? And you're, as a viewer, like, fuck no.
Yeah.
He's the murderer. We know this now.
Don't go up there.
And then it's like literally just like cameras in the hall or whatever. And then they go into the apartment and the door closes. And then it's like, you don't hear anything. The camera just slowly starts backing out of down the stairs, backing away. And you don't hear a struggle. You don't hear nothing.
No.
And then it just all the way backs out into the street.
Yeah.
And you just see the building and traffic going by. And it's just the world is just happening.
But you know
what the fuck is happening up there. And it's was scary.
Yeah.
It was a scary thing just because there was no music also. That's what I really liked, because it made it really real.
Yeah.
You just hearing traffic and seeing people just shopping and going about their day, totally normal fucking Tuesday for them. But
knowing
as
that
a viewer, somebody's
away,
being murdered.
Yeah.
Or maybe worse, unfortunately. Because also pretty disturbing scenes.
Yep.
The assaulty stuff happens. Pretty disturbing. Murder, obviously bad. But yeah, it was. And then the suspense of
I'm gonna make a t-shirt that says "Murder, obviously bad."
Question mark. Guys, murder not good. And then there's the suspense of he's trying to dump the body.
Yeah.
And oh fuck, because she took a pin off of his thing that would identify
and then the potato
him.
truck.
In the potato truck, yeah. And it's why? Because he runs the vegetable stand. It's why would you put it in the potato sack?
Yeah.
They could tie that back to you dumb fuck.
Yeah.
But you never know. But anyway, and then it's he's looking for her in the truck full of potato sacks. Where's the body? And then the truck driver drives away, so he's stuck in the back, and it's oh my god, how
and trying to find the one piece of evidence.
Seriously, yeah. And it's almost getting caught, then not, then almost getting caught.
Totally.
I was surprised.
And the guy who played the killer is so good.
He's very creepy, but very unassuming to everybody else.
He's one of those killers, a real life serial killer, where we know he's creepy because he's a killer.
Yeah.
But everybody who meets him on the street is what a nice guy.
Totally. He's what
a nice man that guy is.
And he's helpful and friendly. And it's funny how doesn't, spoiler alert, it's 1,000 years old, this movie.
Yeah.
But it's the guy who was accused goes to jail but breaks out. I think that's, or something like that.
I think so.
Something, he escapes because he knows now who the killer is.
Yeah.
And then the cop who was investigating is okay, fuck, he kind of is sides with the accused guy.
He's I'll take a chance.
Yeah. And then they show up at the killer's house, and it's just kind of it just ends there, kind of you fucking busted, numbnuts.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And it was just
see, now all those little things, I think that's why I love Frenzy, is because there's so many little things in there that are trademark Hitchcock.
Yeah.
that to me are the reasons he was so brilliant.
Yeah.
The murder scene with no music and not showing it and going out onto the street is like trademark Hitchcock.
Yeah.
The potato truck scene is trademark. Then the ending,
so suspenseful, yeah.
yeah. And what other filmmakers at that time would do a movie where at the end they show up and then the movie ends?
Yeah, like you don't see the actual killer being arrested or anything like that. It's just you fucking caught, and it's just like, oh,
I'll just end with saying there's that famous, there was a famous interview that the filmmaker Francois Truffaut did with Hitchcock. And it was like days of recording interviews because Truffaut was a huge fan of Hitchcock's and said, "Can I interview you about how you make films?"
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's a book.
I wonder if I saw some of that.
There's a book and there's
YouTube.
A documentary now called Hitchcock Truffaut. And the documentary is amazing. Check it out because it's a lot of insight into the actual process. But anyway, his most famous thing is you could make a movie and have a bomb under a table in a restaurant.
Right.
And the bomb goes off and everybody goes, right?
Yeah.
But he says if you show the audience the bomb 5 minutes before, you're going to get 5 minutes of tension instead of 30 seconds of tension.
Absolutely.
And that
always stuck with me. I must have heard that years and years ago, and I've always thought of that.
Yeah,
like,
and that's
just
Hitchcock.
such a brilliant.
That's what makes him that he thinks of that. So
totally.
Anyway, there you go, Hitchcock. So we'll just wrap it up with. Do you have a recommendation for this week? Something to watch? Yeah.
Okay, not so much a recommendation, but just like a mini review.
Okay.
So
you're not recommending it, but you're going to review.
Well, I just want to talk about movies I've seen because maybe it's something somebody likes.
Let's go.
Yeah, we got to. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both.
There you have.
There you have the Real Ramblers. I watched the movie Tusk.
Okay.
The Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah.
Now, Red State is fucking.
Now I understand why you're reviewing but not recommending necessarily. Okay.
Yeah. I just like I'm trying to watch more movies, so I'm just like this is
good for
just
you.
my views. Yeah, I watched Tusk. I love Red State. I thought Red State was Kevin Smith's best movie.
Me too.
By far. It's compelling. The acting is amazing, and Michael Parks. Big part of that, and he's in Tusk.
Yeah,
and I knew it was like a weird concept, but I'm like, I'll go along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it at all. In this movie, there was a good movie. Any of the scenes, I imagine you didn't see it.
I've seen it.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah. Any of the scenes between Michael Parks and fucking what's his nuts, Justin Long, was very compelling and very creepy and very atmospheric and scary. But that's all because of Michael Parks.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Everything around it was
Kevin Smith.
Yeah, in his most like it was like Johnny Depp is in like prosthetics, like I am a Quebec police officer. And that is not much of an exaggeration. And all the other Canadians are like, oh, he's a boot down there, like with the stereotypical not real Canadian accent. And it was like the jokes were like not good.
I 100% agree with you that there is a good movie in there and he just didn't bring it out.
Yeah, and then the ending was the worst ending I've ever fucking seen.
Yeah.
Like they find him, he's obviously like mentally gone because he's been sewn up in this fucking walrus suit.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's go visit him in this like zoo or whatever. And they're chucking him fish and stuff. It's like, okay. That's what you're gonna do. The authorities were just like, you must as well just put him in a zoo.
He was a person, but it doesn't matter.
Maybe help him, maybe unstitch him from this fucking walrus. It was just I left mad that I watched it. So some people do love it. Cool if you connected with it.
Yeah.
There was elements in it. Michael Parks, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. I agree.
Woof.
All right, I'll just throw a quick recommendation out there of a new movie. There's a new David Ayer movie with Jason Statham called Beekeeper, The Beekeeper. And it is like a throwback. David Ayer usually does like serious, gritty action, like End of Watch with Jake Gyllenhaal. But Beekeeper is kind of a throwback to like 80s Arnold and Sly movies.
Okay.
Where it's like, he's a killer and he's better than everybody. And nobody can stop him. You can send a SWAT team of 50 guys and he'll kill them all without a gun.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's
Does he just use bees?
No.
I'll throw a handful of bees at you.
No, but he's like from this elite team called the Beekeepers. And the whole point is they're supposed to keep things in order in the world, like bees do for a queen.
Right.
And he goes rogue after something happens. But the action is off the charts, phenomenal.
Nice.
Statham's in top form. David Ayer's direction is awesome. And it's like an action extravaganza and so much fun.
Nice.
So highly recommended,
Cool, I'll
The
check that
Beekeeper. All right, so that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning into The Real Ramblers, and we'll talk to you next week. Unless Lee's got a sign off of some sort.
I don't know. Do you have a request? I don't know how to do an Alfred Hitchcock. Arnold?
Jamie.
No, not Jamie again. No.
There's going to be repeats. There's going to be.
Oh my God.
The Real Ramblers. Jason, this is for you. Jason, here's a Turbo Man. Yeah, Real Ramblers.
Thank you.
See you next week, folks. Keep on rambling.
Thanks for listening to The Real Ramblers. Follow us on Instagram at Real Ramblers. That's REEL Ramblers. And you can follow Lee at LeeHoward_art and Bill at JustTheBill1138.